Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the July 16th, 2024 School Curriculum Assessment and Accountability Council meeting, otherwise and affectionately known as SCAAC. My name is Jana Beth Francis, and I'm the chair. We are glad everyone is able to come on this morning virtually to join our meeting. I'm going to turn it over to Melissa Chandler, who supports us from the Office of Assessment and Accountability, for roll call and a few reminders. Melissa?
Thank you, Jana Beth. Before I call roll, I would like to give some information for members about conducting meetings in a virtual setting. This meeting must comply with the requirements of the Open Meetings Act, and the public may view the meeting via the link provided in the public agenda, which is posted on the KDE website. SCAAC members must ensure that their video is streaming and they can be seen throughout the duration of the meeting. Additionally, please keep microphones muted unless you're speaking, because all discussions must be broadcast to the public. So each time you do speak during the meeting, please unmute your mic, state your name, and take a short pause. That will just give our software time to recognize you. And for agenda items that are going to require a formal vote, which we may have today, we'll conduct a roll call to record the vote of each member. So additionally, just please silence your cell phones or other electronic devices, anything that could cause disruption to your sound feed. I'll take minutes during the meeting and we'll share those with the general public on the KDE website when they're available. So now I'll move on and I'll call roll. Members, when I call your name, please make sure that your camera and mic are on, state your full name, and indicate that you are present. And I'm looking for 9 members for a quorum today. So Artavia Acklin.
Artavia Acklin, Shelby County Public Schools, present.
Okay. Heather Aldridge.
Heather Aldridge, Russell Independent, present.
Thank you. Deborah Atherton. Houston Barber.
Houston Barber, Fayette County Public Schools, present.
Renee Boss. Martha Emmons.
Hi, I'm here.
Thanks, Martha. Chuck Fletcher.
Chuck Fletcher's present.
Thank you. Jana Beth Francis.
Jana Beth Francis, present.
Leslie Jeffries.
Leslie Jeffries, present.
Got it. Thank you. Lisa Keir. Brenda McGowan.
Brenda McGowan, here.
Okay. Kristen Putnam. Jason Reeves.
Jason Reeves, here.
Okay. Allison Tammy. Jenny Uri. Henry Webb. Okay, and Chair Francis, we do have a quorum today.
That is excellent. So we're going to move on to some of our business. And we did not have, this is our first meeting of this calendar year, and we need to review and approve minutes from 3 different meetings. And so all these minutes have been shared with you in the SCAAC member folder. And so if I could have a motion and a second to approve the July 18th minutes from
Motion.
2023.
Houston Barber, motion.
Artavia Acklin, second.
Okay, now Melissa will do the roll call vote for the members that are present.
And for this one, Jana Beth, since this is just a general vote, we can do an aye and nay. We'll do the roll call vote when we talk about those regulations.
Wonderful. Okay, so all in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carried. Moving on, do I have a motion and a second for the September 19th, 2023 minutes of SCAAC?
Chuck Fletcher, so moved.
Martha Emmons, second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. And finally, the November 21st, 2023 SCAAC minutes. A motion and a second.
I make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Jason. And a second.
McGowan, second.
Thank you, Brenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And I think this is really good timing because our new commissioner, my colleague and friend, Robbie Fletcher, has joined us to give some greetings. I think I saw him on screen.
Yes, ma'am. I'm here, Chair
It's all
Francis.
yours.
Good morning, everyone. As many of you know, this is my first SCAAC meeting, and this is day 16 on the job. So it's been very busy. It's very, very enjoyable. Just a few things before I get into our presentation and talk a little bit and introduce the next people. My background has taken me through a lot of great adventures and journeys. And one of the things I've truly enjoyed about my role as superintendent and also my role within various committees is the work and accountability. First of all, I am an old math teacher, so I enjoy numbers. I enjoy spreadsheets. If somebody presents to me 3 or 4 spreadsheets, it's like Christmas. So it's a real nerdy type thing, but that's a great thing. If you're a former math teacher and someone gives you a spreadsheet, you're busy for hours and you're smiling the whole time. But that being said, one of the biggest draws for applying for this job is where we are right now in accountability. I think we have tremendous potential to do something that is beneficial to students, something that we can all believe in, something that impacts instruction immediately. So I'm very excited to be a part of this work. And we've already presented 2 prototypes from the Kentucky United We Learn work. So this is not something that just KDE's put together. This has gone through the Cool Council with some input from KDE and also being part of those meetings. And we have 2 prototypes that you're going to see today. And I've kind of joked with people that, when I interviewed if we could if I could retire with an assessment accountability system that has the attributes I described earlier, then I could retire. So if this is in June, if this is finished in a couple of years, this is a short tenure for this commissioner. But on a serious note, I hope to stay here a long time, and this is one of the big draws for this. Now, as I get ready to introduce Dr. Stafford, and she's going to talk to us about the Kentucky United We Learn prototypes, I want you to go into this, and I hope your superintendent has already shared some of this with you. I hope you've seen a lot of this already. I hope you've had discussions already. Please do not think of this as prototype 1 versus prototype 2. There's aspects in each prototype that I'm sure that many of you will say, okay, these are things that we really think will work. These are things that are going to impact instruction. More importantly, this is going to impact the experience that our students have on a day-to-day basis. But also too, how can we implement this? We want to also make sure that our teachers are not feeling overburdened, but also to have that belief and have that support of all of our staff members throughout the state. Now, we're all not going to agree, but when you look at this prototype, whatever rubric that you have in your mind, please do not think of it as we're going to vote for prototype 1 or we're going to vote for prototype 2. It's not that at all. You're going to see aspects that you probably like. It may be in prototype 1 that you think would work really well in prototype 2 and vice versa, because that's the approach that I'm taking with this. And hopefully along the way, after input from SCAAC, input from various advisory committees, input from our superintendents, we'll come up with hopefully a prototype 3 that everyone's feeling good about. So along the way, there's a lot of heavy lifting that's been done by our Cool Council, from some of our external partners, and then also to the people here from KDE. So again, I'm very excited to hear your input on this. So be very open, be very candid. And I know that under Chair Francis's leadership that she has a lot of great insight of her own. And again, there's several of you that I've worked with, and it's good to see so many familiar faces again. I won't call out names, but again, it's great to see you folks. And I look forward to this work in particular as being the new commissioner. So at this time, if it's okay, Chair Francis, do you have any questions for me, Chair Francis, or anything you'd like for me to touch on before I turn it over to Dr. Stafford?
No, you did a wonderful job queuing her up, so turn it over.
Thank you, ma'am. And next we have our director here, who I've worked with on several different committees over the years, who does a phenomenal job. always pleased to get the opportunity to talk to Dr. Stafford and watch her work. She is a magician, especially when it comes to these presentations. So sit back and enjoy and have a watchful eye and see what we all can learn together. So Dr. Stafford, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Fletcher, and good morning, everyone. I want to first start out to our members. Thank you so much for being here. We made quorum, and we're so excited to be able to have you here, get your input, and have a full discussion, because that means so much as we get your feedback and take your responses to the Kentucky Board of Education. So just delighted that you are here with us this morning. So as Dr. Fletcher mentioned, we've been working with the Kentucky United We Learn Council now for a couple years, but the road to get here to this discussion has been long. Melissa, if you'll go to the next slide. And the next slide. So what we're seeking today are your thoughts about any future assessment system or accountability program. And reminder, the assessment system are those tests or measures that students take or engage with around content area standards, the Kentucky academic standards, or other types of assessments. The accountability system is separate in that, although connected, the accountability systems are those indicators that we hold schools accountable for for quality of their students in the education that they are giving their students. So we're looking today for your thoughts around potential characteristics, and as Dr. Fletcher mentioned, we're going to present 2 prototypes, and there are decision points within each of those. And last week, Melissa shared an email, and in that email was a link to a prototype document. And that prototype document goes into great detail about the prototypes and the decision points, as well as a video that supported the explanation of the prototypes. And we really want you as members to complete that survey. So we are going to talk with you today about the prototypes, get your feedback here during this meeting, but we also want you to complete that survey, because the survey results will be displayed and shared with the Kentucky United We Learn Council on July 29th. So Melissa, if you'll go to the next slide. As I mentioned, the road to get here has been long. It's been one that has taken us through multiple steps. Through the Kentucky United We Learn Council, we've had our Chief Academic Officer, Karen Dodd, has presented to SCAAC several times about the work that's being completed to envision a new assessment and reimagined accountability system. And it started with the United We Learn report. And in that report, there emerged 3 kind of big topics or ideas: that vibrant learning experiences for every student is important to be demonstrated and provided to our students within our schools and districts; to engage and encourage innovation in our districts around innovation, especially in assessment and accountability; and creating bold new futures in collaboration with our communities. The council has a moonshot, which is to build a prosperous Kentucky. We will launch an accountability system that reflects an assessment system that is meaningful and useful to our learners. So that's the big goal for the United We Learn Council. Melissa, if you'll go to the next slide, please. So Currently, we're in year 2 of our council. It's comprised of 55 members, and it's led by Penny Christian, who is the chair, Jim Flynn, who's the vice chair, and Karen Dodd, who's the KDE lead. Now, when we started in 2022, November of 2022, and throughout 2023, we were structured in committees, and those were standing committees at that time around those 3 key ideas: accelerating innovation, bold new futures, and collaborations with communities, and vibrant learning experiences. So those committees met throughout 2023, learning together and exploring different ideas. In November of 2023, we took a turn and we started with work groups that were meant to be focused, short-term work groups comprised of the members. And they're around specific topics, and they're meant to be short, very focused committees that provide a deliverable in a very focused time frame. So those work groups started in November of 2023. I got to facilitate a work group around the systems of systems at that time. And then come April of 2024, those committees, those work groups were transitioned into 4 new work groups around district support and quality, engaging communities, learning with local districts, and then the work group that I get to facilitate or help facilitate is the menu of options work group. So we started meeting in April of this year around these prototypes, or reimagining a new assessment and accountability systems. Next slide, please. So the goal here is for legislation to be introduced and approved for the General Assembly in 2026. So looking at the 2026 General Assembly, we have a goal to have legislation during that time. But to get there, the road starts here with the prototype development. And you can see here that with the circles that the prototypes are being developed at this time. The plan for this year is to or this summer is to have our prototypes go through an iterative phase. And that is, we're constantly seeking feedback, and we are bringing that feedback and revising each of the prototypes along the way. We started in April with our menu of options work group, who gave us feedback. As facilitators, we tried to capture their thoughts and developed a version 1.0 that we presented to them in June, on June 20th, and then again on June 24th. And the menu of options work group gave us some feedback that they would like to see changes in that version 1.0 that are reflected in version 2.0 that you are receiving. So we are getting feedback along the way and updating those prototype documents in different iterations as we receive more and more feedback. And of course, that's where you come in. Then we're going to move into at the end of the month, we'll take all the feedback we get from the advisory committees that we present to this month and give those feedback to our Kentucky United We Learn Council on July 29th. And again, meet with our local superintendent advisory council on the 30th of this month. Based on all of their feedback, version 3.0 will go to the Kentucky Board of Education on August 7th. So it's a fast turnaround. We're getting input from lots of people to continue to this progress on reimagining our accountability and assessment systems. Along the way, we're keeping legislators informed and actively engaged in the conversation. Several invited members have been invited to the United We Learn convening on the 29th and are attending, so we're excited about that. Once we move past the Board of Education meeting in August, we'll have another version. We're looking toward version 4.0 that goes into what we call a study phase. And that study phase is going to be where we dig deeper into the prototype or prototypes at that time, because there could be more than two as we move through, because we want lots of ideas here. And so we have the ability to have influence and input on this, this document. We'll go into talking with several of our local districts, our local labs of learning in this study phase, as well as districts that are outside of the local lab of learning. We'll move into the fall with the council recommendations and with the Kentucky Department of Education, as well as the Kentucky Board of Education, and then move through the spring of 2025 with conversations continued with the board and into the interim joint next summer with in fall of 2025. And again, looking at legislation for 2026. Next slide, please. So let's look now at the prototype. And again, these are emerging set of prototypes that are ready for your input and feedback. The first approach with prototype 1 brings into the conversation an accreditation style accountability system where schools and districts would have flexibility on demonstrating quality around domains. And listed on the slide are some quality measures that could be part of the demonstration that schools would collect evidence around. The reimagined accountability system would allow our districts and schools to have the flexibility to provide the evidence that demonstrate that domain, that they're meeting that domain and those quality domains through the evidence they have at their local district. So this accreditation style, this evidence would be submitted to an outside external evaluator, and the schools would receive feedback from that external evaluator based on some rubrics or that are either locally developed or shared across the state. The submission of evidence would be on regular intervals. It could be on a updating basis, a regular basis, and the proposal right now in the prototype 1 is that would be about every 3 years. So this, there's also a reduction of content area assessments or accountability pieces within the assessment and accountability programs to be reduced to meet only the federal law. So streamlining that federal accountability to only the minimum that is required. In prototype 1 as well, there is a reduction of the state color rating that we currently have now from blue to red, and that would be a reduction of the colors to only the federal classifications for federal support. Right now we have TSI, Targeted Support and Improvement, ATSI, Additional Targeted Support and Improvement, and CSI, Comprehensive Support and Improvement. And we only need one more. So we're suggesting that that is something other, such as meets requirements. Next slide, please. So the first choice point within prototype 1 is around individual student growth or change. So in our current system, we have change, which is a school measure on our state indicators. So the difference between what the school performs from one year to the next on our indicators such as state assessment results in reading and math, state assessment results on science, social studies, and writing, or our post-secondary readiness indicators, those big state indicators, the difference between current year performance and prior year performance. And this will be the second year that we have change in the system coming in the fall of 2024. Now, we could continue with the change, or we could replace the change measure with individual student growth, which individual student growth is the student performance on reading and math from one year to the next. So taking a student's performance with what they do in, for example, 2023 in reading, and seeing how they perform in 2024 and measuring that growth from year to year. So that's a choice point for this first prototype. Next slide, please. Another choice point within prototype 1 is assessment options. And we talked about the difference between assessments and accountability. And so this is the first options here around state assessment. So we're looking, again, these are not an exclusive list. There were other suggestions made from the menu of options work group. They have other ideas as well. So, and you may have more. So these are the ones that kind of bubbled to the top. The first one is around a through course model that captures student learning and growth in reading and math within the academic year. So looking at a possibility of taking assessments in reading and math and possibly science over a course of the year multiple times. That similar to what districts are doing now with their local purchased interim or benchmark assessments. A lot of our schools are using like NWEA's MAP or iReady. So the right idea here is to replace those locally adopted interim assessments with a system of through course from the state that is comprehensive and coherent. We would still have a small summative assessment in the spring that would align with these. And then the state assessments in science, social studies, and writing then would remain the same. Option 1.2b is around a competency based, where the schools would provide our students with authentic demonstrations of knowledge, where the student could demonstrate not only the content, but the skills and abilities aligned to the school's portrait of a learner. This would be for math, reading, and science. And it would also have to have a short assessment along with those performance tasks. This, if used in the federal accountability, would have to have some waivers and some flexibilities from the U.S. Department of Education. And because our districts are in different places around competency-based, it would need time for that system to be piloted within a number of districts before then it could be possibly scaled statewide. The third option here around the assessments would be to reduce the number of assessment used to determine academic proficiency to meet only those federal requirements. And those federal requirements are reading, math, and science only. So the science and social studies would be assessed locally and used for local assessments. Now, we could do this in multiple ways, including the two options here in 1.2a and 1.2b. So, Melissa, if you go to the next slide. So, prototype 2 then brings about a different approach. In this one, there is focus on vibrant learning experiences. Option 2.1a is around bringing the vibrant learning experiences into that federal accountability to meet federal approval. The indicator would then be used as part of federal accountability for those classifications of CSI, TSI, and ATSI and such. The options here on the slide came from our System of Systems work group. They were moving toward a menu of options with a defined number of options. You can see here from student capstone projects, student-led conferences. The menu of options work group wanted to add the flexibility for our schools or districts to be able to submit a vibrant learning experience option for approval through the department. So if there's something that we haven't captured here in the list of options, that the school or district would be able to create something and submit it for approval to meet that vibrant learning experience indicator. Now, with this option for federal accountability, then we would have to have all the rubrics the same. So if we had different, even though we had different types of projects, the rubrics on those would have to be the same. In 2.1b would be the Vibrant Learning Experience Indicator, where schools would then evaluate whether the students had vibrant learning experiences across this 5-point rubric, from no evidence that they had vibrant learning experiences to exceptional vibrant learning experiences, and it would be reported alongside. Actually, this one would have the percentage of students within our vibrant learning experiences. So we would collect that from our districts and present that in our state accountability system, separate from our federal, and it would be reported alongside other indicators in the school report card. Now, this option would allow for that vibrant learning experience indicator to impact a color rating. So if, for example, a school had a high or the highest couple levels of within the vibrant learning experience indicators, it would have impact on the color rating. So for example, if the school was an overall orange and had a high vibrant learning experience rating, then it could move up to a yellow on their overall performance. So valuing those vibrant learning experiences within the school accountability system. Next slide, Melissa. So that we're all coming from the same definition of vibrant learning experiences. It's about learning that matters to students, where students partner with families and communities, and students are agents of their own learning. They're engaged. They are learning. They are engaging with instruction with their teachers around things that are culturally viable and that they can connect to. So the Kentucky United We Learn Council did approve this definition of vibrant learning experiences. Next slide, Melissa. So as we're thinking through these prototypes, there are other considerations that we need to keep in mind. And that's the really exciting thing about this work, is that we're thinking about the policy, but we're also thinking about the implementation and how it impacts us, our schools and districts. As we're thinking through the choice points, we have to think about the information around each of those choice points and how they would serve to communicate around that school quality measures within our school. We also want to consider our support and improvement efforts and the impact it would have on federal accountability, as well as the physical impact. So the impact whenever there are changes to laws, to regulations, to statutes, it does have impact on our resources. So we know that it takes time and money and effort to make changes and put things in place. So we want to be aware and keep our students, our staff, our teachers, our administrators in mind as we are reimagining these and having these discussions. Next slide. The impact on federal statutes and implementations. If we change anything in our accountability system, we have to go through approval for our ESSA state plan. So any changes to the accountability system, we have to seek approval from the U.S. Department of Education on through our consolidated state plan. If we seek changes through assessments, we have to go and seek approval through our peer review process. If it's changes to the state, what we need is to seek changes through the General Assembly, through the Kentucky Board of Education, or through the Kentucky Department of Education. Next slide, please. So we're looking for your input. We're looking forward to hearing your feedback on these today, but we also want you to, again, take that survey. So let me pause there because I've talked about those some of the upcoming activities and see what you think and what your thoughts are about the characteristics of an assessment system and or an accountability system.
Let me remind our members that if you want to see this slide deck, you have access to that if you want to go back and take a look. At this time, I would open the floor to any questions. I would like to start. The accreditation style is something that many of our high schools are very familiar with. And has the committee talked at all about how to make sure in 6 years this doesn't turn into a compliance metric?
Sure.
Are there new ways of doing kind of accreditation style accountability?
Sure, yes, that is a discussion and a concern that any of these become a compliance, whether it's the accreditation or if it's the vibrant learning experiences. The desire is for students to engage in vibrant learning experiences, that they have a engaging experience within their their school so that they want to be there. It's connected to them personally, that it's in the context of where they desire to go, or their goals, for where they want to be when they leave high school. There is that also the discussions are happening around the level of teacher experiences and preparedness for these types of different approaches. So, with that, there will need to be training. There'll need to be professional developments around any of these different approaches we take.
Jennifer,
my
if I
last-
may,
Go ahead.
Please.
Janabeth, Chair Francis, one of the things to keep in mind too, this is part of the input process. It'd be very likely that someone on here, and you brought up a great question there. So, you could say, this is something that this is a concern that I have about the accreditation part, but this is maybe an area where you could address it. Again, we haven't got input from everyone. We don't know how many people really like the accreditation part or how many people feel like this is something that we want to steer away from. But please include your input if you have something. This is how we could avoid the issues we had in the past with these type of models. So we're really looking for that type of input too. Even if you agree or disagree, adding that input to say, okay, this is interesting to me, but these are some of the pitfalls, and this may be some of the ways to avoid that. So we're really looking for some really in-depth, and again, you folks are really some of our many specialists, if you will, when it comes to accountability. That's why you're on this committee. We want to hear what you see as pros, something that can really work, or maybe this could work, but we have to make sure that we know this is a possibility and maybe this is how we address it. So a great question. I know where you're coming from there on that. And it is a concern, but also too, how do we avoid those type of things would be the input that we're looking for there too. And again, to add to that, when we think about vibrant learning experiences, and I won't go through the whole story, but for me, the hard part for me moving through, I've been through a lot of PLA districts and PLA schools. And the hard part about accountability is we met goals. We celebrated meeting goals. But at the end of the day, were we really relevant? And so we changed the focus to include that more of that career technical. So my question to this group is our accountability system we have now, is it relevant? And if not, and anything from vibrant learning experiences to the everyday, how do we make it better? So again, great question, Janabeth. And if there's anything that you could add insight to that, love to hear it.
I would just say that, having been through multiple accountability systems, anytime we do something non-traditional, we tend to see this jump of everybody's going to get there. And then it's not it doesn't give the actual life that it hoped. I love the accreditation style from a concept of saying, this is what our community values and here's what we're showing. I think, when I think about how we collect data, if we're collecting the right data all along, it's not compliance. It's just come see what we're doing and it's already there. So I think there's real potential with that system. But I also personally love the vibrant learning experience. My one question that has come up in my district, when the district team will look at this feels very directed towards high school. And I know you all are looking K-12. Can you talk a little bit, Jennifer, about conversations that might have been had about elementary and middle school? When people read this vibrant learning experiences, we do student-led conferences and we see that. I guess we're just thinking lots of this has always been in the context for me as someone who doesn't have this going on right now in the district, as this is what another high school is doing. What's the conversation around elementary and middle?
Yeah, so in April, we had a couple of districts who came to the Kentucky United We Learn Council meeting and demonstrated excellent. I mean, they were so eye-opening and informative. These capstone projects and defenses of learning from 5, 8, and high school. And so I remember the little girl, it was a fifth grader, and she gave her defense of what she had been learning, and it was so powerful. And she was able to think back, and that the metacognition around her learning was exciting to see, and a level of learning and thought that is very exciting within that. So these can be done at the elementary and middle school levels.
And to add to that, Jennifer's absolutely right. Those presentations, there's a couple that bring tears to your eyes, and it was phenomenal.
Yes.
It was one of those things just to be like, wow, I am just thankful to be in the same room as that child.
Yes.
So the one thing I will say too is, as we move forward, let's really look at an accountability system that changes the student experience. So as we go through, what makes it a more enriching experience, a relevant experience, and not only for high school students. And sometimes as a former high school principal, my lens is a lot through that high school lens. What does it look like for that elementary student? And seeing some of those capstone projects for an elementary student is phenomenal. So again, how do we make sure that students have those type of opportunities throughout the entire state? So again, I'm not trying to push one method or another. As a matter of fact, Janabeth, some of these options scare me, but in a good way, because I think it has the opportunity to really improve the student experience and impact them day to day. And if it doesn't push us to the edge a little bit, but it still has to be something that's practical for us to implement. So how do we balance those two items and make sure that our student experience is improving? So again, I hate to keep chiming in. Jennifer, you're doing a beautiful job, but when she mentioned those student experiences, I had to say something because it was great. It really was.
I would encourage you all. I love the transparency that the Cool Council has had through everything, and I've gone back and watched some meetings, but sometimes there might be things, like you just said, if there are things that can be highlighted, snippets of those meetings from an understanding standpoint, that would be great to see. I know some members have come off mute, so I want to pause and see if other people have questions or comments.
Okay. Artavia Ackland here. Okay, I was sitting here and I was like, I can't be quiet because I've experienced these vibrant learning experiences at the elementary level, and now I'm at the middle school. So I'll say we had defensive learnings at the elementary level, and some of those fifth grade students, I think because of the way that teaching is done at elementary, just embodied saving artifacts all year, defending their learning because they're reflecting every day. This is something that's kind of ingrained. And so as I transitioned to the middle school, last year was my first year in middle school, I was like, what is the difference in the middle school experience as it relates to the defense? So there are lots of things I'll do differently this year. First year was just kind of, let me figure this out, that I've taken this crazy jump. But it is the way we teach. In middle school, it's siloed kind of because you're content specialists. Whereas in elementary, everything fits together. We're reflecting all day, every day. And so it's quite possible to do it at elementary and middle and it be successful. Me personally, I viewed it as a parent. My child, my youngest one did it as a fifth grader. And then my senior has done 8th and 12th. And so it's just been amazing to watch them reflect on their growth as students. If you can ever get out and about and just see one, or I don't even know if we have the videos from the ones that were done, when did we go? June. There was a 5th grade, 8th grade, and a senior. Just go look. You'd be surprised at what those younger kids can do.
Houston, you had your hand up. Octavia, I know you and I will talk, and I would love to come see some of your middle school kids.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay? Yeah, so first of all, very exciting to see both prototypes come to the table and just the different elements that exist throughout those prototypes. And as Dr. Fletcher said, there's pieces and parts I think about in each of those, and I'll talk about in a minute. I've been fortunate enough to see those vibrant learning experiences come to life, and both in elementary, middle, and high. And one question I have is, how could we combine potentially showing student growth in those experiences? Because I do think there's the capability of showing that throughout the process, and even as a critical summative kind of component. But I'm excited. I think this is an opportunity in a moment in time. It's the first I've seen where there's, true collaboration coming together to really make this happen. And so I'm excited that this work is taking place. And knowing that Dr. Fletcher's at the helm is exciting as well. Good friend and colleague there. But I can't think of a more exciting time, and being in a bigger district. I feel like that our kids deserve the opportunity to share some of the learning that's taking place outside of just the federal requirements, which I understand are absolutely important, and we have to put credence into those as well. But I fully suspect that we've got to look at a way to get to those vibrant learning experiences.
Martha, I know you wanted to jump in.
I come from a bit of a different background in that I am representing business, and but I have a degree in teaching, and I worked for 7 years as a county extension agent for 4-H, and for 11 years as a speech and debate coach while I ran my business. So it's very interesting and exciting to me, the vibrant learning whole component. And so more than a question, I just have some comments and some, you might make a question out of it, but input coming from the business community. The first thing that I see is that so much of what you're describing seems to me to be what we typically think of as extracurricular activities, which for both of our daughters really propelled them to be successful adults. And working with 6 years of children in 4-H, starting at third grade level, seeing that learn by doing, I've seen so many children who were floundering in the classroom who picked up something they had a gift in, whether it was photography, and started doing demonstrations, or maybe it was pet care or leaf collecting. And then their reading is enhanced because they want more information. And things like going to environmental camp, and all of a sudden you start to learn about bugs and you learn about trees, and kids who do student government who've had no interest in classroom learning, and then suddenly parliamentary procedure brings them into that, and science fairs and part-time jobs. And as early as our children's elementary school, I believe it was at third grade, when they had citizenship club and they started doing community service and learning about litter. And it's just wonderful to me to see the things that really matter in their life. And I think the description that you have of the value of the what is it called, the learner, vibrant learner, that is, it almost seems like the kind of assessment that we do when we're selecting kids for governor's school for entrepreneurs, or governor's school for the arts, or GSP. Those cumulative things that kids write about in order to be selected seems to me that somehow could be the way that we assess all the kids as they move along. So really, it's just a lot of different thoughts there. It's very, very positive, and yet it changes the way we think of school. And it's certainly harder when you have so many kids. And definitely, I believe reading is the key to everything. I mean, we have to work on that in the elementary grades, but if we can get kids to be reading about things that apply to their culture and to their gifts, and then, you know, our daughter who extracurricular, went to state in math counts, loved math counts, and now she's a program manager for huge government, federal things. Our new commissioner would love all the statistics and charts she looks at every day. And our daughter who loved speech and debate and was excused from school to be in plays at our community theater is a producer in New York City. I mean, certainly those hands-on experiences are really how we direct kids into future success, I believe.
Mr. Fletcher?
Thank you very much. I agree with the previous speaker there as well about something about community service. I don't know how much we are involved for as community service, but I think that's very important as well. A couple of things I want to ask. One is, you mentioned the 55 members as a part of your team community. I want to ask, of the 55 members, were there community leaders involved? That's
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes,
Great.
absolutely. We have a diverse group of stakeholders from community members, business leaders, parents, and also across the education spectrum.
Okay, thank you. The next one is just recently our legislatures just passed $5 million to deal with middle schoolers with called middle school academies. And I don't know how much is going to be involved in that, but I know they're looking at palliative programs for really investment with students in middle schoolers. So I didn't see that mentioned, or maybe it is going to be mentioned. I don't know, but one experience that I think will be vital to our middle schoolers and having a great experience is that middle school academies that the legislatures put $5 million in this year, and hopefully in the next next couple of years, they will put more money in to have other middle schoolers provide money for them to have academies as well as to have that educational experience. So I just want to mention that I did not see that in your presentation. It might be there.
So the U.S. Department of Education requires that all schools be included in accountability, and all students that are in accountability. So if the academy is designated as a school, those students would be accountable to the school. But if it's a program, then within the district, then it would be the students then would be accountable to either the school or the district, depending, on how it's set up. But all students are accountable somewhere. Unless they don't take the test, or they have a non-participation or something like that.
Okay, so I think the biggest thing is you all are trying to get feedback by Friday. Is that right, Jennifer?
It is a short turnaround. That's the reason we sent it last week, so that you could have the video, have the document, and then the link to the survey is also in the slide deck. So you've got it a couple of times, and I can put it here in chat for us so that you'll have it very handy for you, and be able to just grab it from the, oh no, the chat's turned off. The chat feature's turned off for this meeting. So Ben's locked me out on that. So we can follow up with a second email, and because we
right here, is it not linked on this slide that we're looking at, number 14?
It is. Oh, you can click the slide. You can click the slide and get to it. So wonderful. Just So look at that technology working like that. So yes, please complete that. And as Dr. Fletcher mentioned, if you have thoughts and how it could work and what some obstacles would be, because you have vast experiences across all of our members. So we're looking again for your feedback by Friday of this week. Then, as I mentioned earlier, all the feedback is going to be collected across multiple stakeholders that will be presented on July 29th to all the Kentucky United We Learn members. So they'll get to hear that, consider the feedback, and then have input on an updated version 3.0. So please engage with us within that survey, and the survey around those choice points. If you have just a few minutes, it wouldn't take 15 minutes to complete that, because it's a choice, like a drop down choice. And then if you have comments, then there's areas, open fields for comments as well.
Jennifer, as always, this is not only cool from the Cool Council, but exciting. So we appreciate everything you all have done. It's neat to see it get to the prototype level. And I will remind everybody what Commissioner Fletcher mentioned. You're not this prototype or that prototype. You're looking at the components, because the hope is that we come together with something that's prototype 3 that brings the best of both to the surface. So anything else, Jennifer? If not,
No.
Okay, I feel like we need our running shoes on, because it's time to cover a bunch of proposed amendments to various regulations. And we're going to start with 703 KAR 5240, Accountability Administrative Procedures and Guidelines. Rhonda Sims and Jennifer Larkin, two more of the amazing people from OAA, are here to talk to us about this. Before they get started, what we will do is we actually have to say at the end if we are in favor of the proposed amendments or not. So we're kind of going to go through these and consider them in discussions for each one. And a reminder that all this information, if you need to read more closely, if you've got everybody's pictures big on your screen, you can get that in your SCAAC folder as well. So Rhonda, or I think you're up first.
I think I'm up first. Thank you, Janet Beth, and appreciate everybody being online today. And Jennifer does a fabulous job, and Commissioner Fletcher, talking about really something that's very exciting and new. And the way I've kind of thought about how that compares to this, it's as if we're building a house and we're excited about that new house, but we still have to do a little maintenance on the house we're currently living in. And so the current accountability system, we have some spaces where we need to do some updates and kind of bring forward some information. And that's going to be really the overriding theme on the ones that we bring forward for you today. This particular administration, a regulation that we're looking at in 240, it does establish administrative procedures and guidelines for accountability, particularly which students should be assessed, which cannot be assessed, how they are coded, when do they move into a school's accountability versus a district. Some of these rules are based in federal law and expectation. You heard Jennifer a few moments ago talk about accountabilities are really about all students and all schools. And this regulation sort of puts the rules in place for how you code students. And again, some of those are expectations on a federal level as well as state. There's also processes for appealing a classification of a school in the whatever accountability system might exist. And so we have these regulations were originally drafted before we had some exciting kinds of schools developing, really before we had virtual online programs in place. And so we're at a point now we need to really kind of update the procedures to account for the fact that there are different kinds of school programs that students are having experiences with. And so as we move to the next slide, our question for you as we go through this, and this is going to be a little bit two-part. We're going to talk about the accountability regulation around this, and Jenny Larkins will step up here in a moment to do that. But then you'll also hear from our Office of Education Technology, because they also have sort of companion amendments in some of their regulations. So our thought for a guiding question for you is, do the proposed amendments clearly communicated the recommended changes? Do they bring up questions? Is this clear to you about why we're asking for these particular changes? And again, not a massive amount of change within our regulation, but at the same time, making sure that we've got a space within the accountability system for different kind of programs to exist and be successful, and how then students can be handled appropriately within those rules of including everyone. So Jenny Larkin is with me. She is a policy advisor in the Office of Assessment and Accountability, and Jenny's going to walk us through the changes we're proposing here.
Thank you, Rhonda. Good morning. So you heard Jennifer mention a few minutes ago that we have accountable schools and we have non-accountable programs, and that the non-accountable programs, that doesn't mean that they're not accountable at all. They do have accountability in the school report card. They have their own page, but they're not eligible for that comprehensive support, targeted support and improvement, and additional targeted support and improvement. But the accountable schools, if we come back to that, that's where most students are attending. It's those traditional types of schools that most students go to every day. So our first amendment here that we're recommending, there are about 12 occurrences in the regulation where we use the term A1 when we're talking about a school that is accountable or eligible for those federal classifications. But a couple of years ago, there was another school classification added that's also accountable, which is a B1. And that is a lab or training school that's operated by a college or university. So with that new addition, and then actually kind of setting up the flexibility if other accountable schools are developed, then we will be able just to say accountable school instead of A1. So that's our recommendation. Just delete the A1 and replace it with accountable school. We also are going to talk a little bit about the full-time enrolled online virtual and remote learning programs at lower places in the regulation. So because we're doing that, we also have to add it to our definitions in the regulation. And basically, we're just going to say that it's defined by the regulation that Marty's going to talk to you about in a minute. Then in section 2, we have language that talks about how students who are attending an accountable school for at least a full academic year or 100 instructional days will be attributed to the accountability of that accountable school. And then we have a sentence after that says, this shall include state agency children or other students enrolled by any authority. We are recommending to delete that because it just seems to call those students out when there doesn't really seem a need to do that, because all of those students who meet that criteria will fall into that's A1 accountability. We are recommending also deleting enrolled in an alternative education program in a certain place. And so here, I'm just going to explain that when in the section that talks about students attributed to state accountability, we have this sentence that says students enrolled in alternative education programs not attributed to A1 schools or districts, those students will go to the state. We want to delete that because it really is every student who's not attributable to a district or a school is going to be accountable to the state, pending those other criteria. Those are the recommendations there. Now, Marty's going to explain to you about the accountability part of the virtual programs. That his regulation is going to require that students enrolled in those programs are also enrolled in accountable schools, and that those the accountability will attribute to that accountable school. But We also have an area that in the regulation that talks just about the reporting of non-accountable schools. So the full-time enrolled virtual and remote learning programs aren't currently included in there. So because they are not accountable schools and they are not alternative education programs, we have to add this language to these reporting pieces. So the first one just tells us that that these virtual programs will receive accountability reporting based on tested students. Again, not in accountability, but they'll get reports. They'll be reported on the school report card on their tested students. But it separates that reporting from the accountable school reporting where those students are enrolled. So they'll have their own separate reports. We also have added those virtual programs to the requirement that on their page that they do state their unique features, what's unique about the program and what are the characteristics, and then a note about how to appropriately use the data and what the limits are on the data. And then finally, we have a section here that we'll have to add those virtual programs to, where we say that the reporting requires that our schools will be either into 1, 2, or 3 grade level configurations. In other words, they'll be reported as either elementary, the elementary middle, or elementary middle high, depending on whether it's, like say if it's a K-12, for example, they're going to have 3 different reports based on the levels. We have one phrase that it was recommended that we rephrase it just to make it clearer. It does not change the meaning whatsoever, but just the wording is actually a little more clear about what we're trying to say. And that's just basically that if a student has a medical condition and the school would like to request a non-participation or exemption for that student, that they will have to submit that request to the department for approval. And then finally, we had a sentence that called for, it actually said that when a student can't be attributed to a school and so forth, that, I apologize, that we require assessments that students without, an approved medical exemption shall be excluded from state required assessments and state and federal accountability. However, we don't phrase it that way in any other part in the regulation, and just for consistency and so that it doesn't seem like we're talking about something different here, we're recommending to delete state and federal when describing those accountability calculations. And so that's just a summary of the changes. I don't know if you have any questions about any of that or any comments to make on that before Janabeth asks for approval.
Jennifer, go ahead, Rhonda.
Oh, I was just going to say, Jennifer's been advancing the slides. You may not be aware, Jennifer, your camera has clicked off during the slide advance.
No, I'm not aware. It looks on to me.
I see her camera.
Okay. So maybe that's just something with mine.
I see her.
Okay, great. Well, she's lovely, so I'm sorry that I'm not seeing her other than her picture, but sorry about that. That is obviously something just with my machine. Yes, Janabeth, how would you like to proceed? See if we have questions.
I have a quick question, and so I just want to make sure. So I know these regulations are all coming together. If a school system has a full-time online virtual and remote program, are you now saying that is considered an accountable school?
No.
Okay.
It won't be an accountable school, but the students enrolled in those programs will be required to also be enrolled or at some point be enrolled in an A1 school where their accountability will be attributed. And Marty's going to give a little bit more about that. I believe, Marty, that will be beginning in the school year 25-26. I didn't want to say the things you're going to say, but not an accountable school.
Okay, so basically any online or virtual remote student will have accountability go back to what we used to call A1, the accountable schools now, is what we're
Correct.
saying. Okay.
That's it. That's
And again,
exactly right.
well, and I don't want to, Marty may clarify on this, but I want to say the students that are in virtual programs in alignment with this regulation that Marty's getting ready to talk about.
Okay.
And so he probably can clarify that a little bit.
Okay, so does anyone have any questions for Jennifer or Rhonda? If not, I would entertain a motion and a second to approve the proposed amendments to 703 KAR 5240 Accountability Administrative Procedure and Guidelines.
Martha Emmons, I so move.
Thank you. And a second?
I second Jason Reeves.
Thank you, Jason. Okay, and I believe, Melissa, you will do a roll call vote for this.
Yes, thank you so much. When you hear your name, just say aye if you agree and nay if you do not. Artavia Acklin.
Aye.
Heather Aldridge.
Aye.
Deborah Atherton.
Aye.
Houston Barber.
Aye.
Martha Emmons.
Aye.
Chuck Fletcher.
Aye.
Chair Francis.
Aye.
Leslie Jeffries.
Aye.
Brenda McGowan.
Aye.
Jason Reeves.
Aye.
Okay. We have a consensus. Thank you.
Okay. And so continuing with this regulation kind of consideration, we're now moving to proposed amendments to 704 KAR 3535, which deals with full-time enrolled online, virtual, and remote learning programs. We have Marty Park and Lisa Moore, and I believe Ben. Lots of people here to talk to us about this. So I'll turn it over. I think Marty's going to key everyone up.
Yes, how you doing today? Thank you so much. While I have had the opportunity to participate with SCAAC in the last 2 years, the last time we talked about this specific in the establishment and launch of 704 KAR 3:535 was in 2022. And so anytime, as Associate Commissioner Sims mentioned, anytime you establish a new administrative regulation, we go through the implementation process, and then we have to go back and clean some things up and make sure that all of the procedural questions that have been asked in the implementation we can answer and move it forward. So I did want to make mention that Mr. Ben Maynard, who leads this work as our statewide online virtual remote learning program lead all across the state. He leads this for the KDE, but he's actually leading a professional learning event for our online virtual and remote learning network today. And so he's not able to join us, but he is always available along with myself for feedback or any questions. Generally speaking, at this time, and with the majority of the programs across the state that we're talking about, just as a note for consideration as we consider these companion amendments, we're seeing a plateau of enrollment in our online virtual and remote learning programs across the state. We did see an increase post-pandemic as a small percentage of learners found that they excelled in a full-time program like we're talking about. We do have one relatively new program that has experienced a tremendous enrollment spike. But in general, that was due to the non-resident student law that we're all familiar with. When we look nationwide at online virtual and remote programs, Kentucky is seeing currently an alignment with enrollment numbers. For example, lower grade levels, K through 3, Kentucky is consistent with the nationwide lens on this, that there's a drop in interest, a drop in enrollment in grades K through 3, which we expected and we projected 2 years ago, back in 2022, when we launched this administrative regulation at the request of superintendents. So thanks to Associate Commissioner Sims and Jenny, who led us through the main new requirement, which I would classify as really a cleanup amendment. And the details around it regarding accountability have been shared a little bit already. I'll address a couple things. But anytime, as I said, anytime we create new regulation, we have to go back and clean some spots up. So the new piece, and just to, I'll pause real quick just to hit the guiding question. Have the strategic conversations about full-time enrolled virtual students in your district changed in your district or in your community in the last 3 years? That's the guiding question for us. That's what we are continuing to look towards. And with these proposed amendments, I wanted to just summarize what these proposed amendments are approaching. I do want to hit before summarizing that while my position and I'm leading a lot of these efforts from our Office of Education Technology, this is, like others, this is one of the topics that literally touches every office at the Department of Education. And so our Office of Teaching and Learning, our Office of Financial Operations, obviously our Office of Assessment and Accountability, we're all working together to help this student learning experience progress. And so the new section, the new component, as mentioned by Jenny already, it's in section 5.2 of the administrative regulation. This is what I keep saying. This is the one new thing. It is to say that it's the explicit enrollment requirement is new. However, I want to make note that the strategy and structure is not new at all. And so, again, our OAA team already briefly touched on it, but procedurally, as school and district leaders, you're aware that the main way that programs are enrolling students today is through a primary and secondary enrollment strategy. So that is to say that students are primarily enrolled in the accountable school, and then they're secondarily enrolled in the online virtual remote learning program. And so the ability to do this is not new, but the requirement for students to be enrolled in this way due to accountability is the new component in Section 5. And I wanted to mention that just in a data sampling of 7 districts sampled who have online virtual remote learning programs, which represent, of these 7 programs, represent 1,300 students, which is about a 1.8% of student enrollment, which fits in that projected range that we expected 2 years ago. Less than 2% annually enrolled in these kind of programs is what we projected, and we'll continue to watch that. But of the 7 programs, in 5 of the programs, the enrollment is 90% in-district resident kids. 6 of the 7 programs already have this structure in place. They're already enrolled primarily in the accountable school. 3 of the 6 have a secondary enrollment as the new classification of A8, and the other 3 are in an A5 program. And so I also wanted to mention that several of the programs already have a presence in the school report card suite. They already have that reporting component in place. And so the representation that Jenny gave is already something that programs are doing, not all, but most. And so again, the key takeaway, the majority of programs are already doing a primary enrollment in the accountable school. And so that's important. The next thing was a clarification. This is in Section 6 of the amended, the proposed amended regulation. And this is where teachers must be employed by the school district. This is employed pursuant to an employment contract with the Kentucky Public School District for no less than 185 days and paid pursuant to a single salary schedule as established in KRS 157350. This, again, is a clarification. It's not new. We've already answered this question throughout the past couple years, and working with our Office of Legal Services and our General Counsel. This is just a clarification that we've ensured is in the amendment. We do have one section where it's an emphasis, and so Section 2.2 is emphasizing that each local board shall adopt and annually review policies and procedures for the operation of the full-time online virtual remote programs. That language has been in there. The emphasis is that this also includes procedures for regular periodic monitoring of the program. While that was intended in the original language, working with some of our programs and receiving some questions, we thought it was important to emphasize that part, that that includes explicitly stating that procedures for regular periodic monitoring of the program. This further aligns with our existing digital learning guidelines, which you may be familiar with, may not. But these digital learning guidelines emphasize this point about periodic monitoring. We just want to ensure that anytime a student is enrolled in an online virtual remote learning program, that progress is the focus. Student progress and learning is the key. That's the most important part, and we want to ensure that there is regular periodic monitoring there at the local level. And then finally, there are just other minor, I would say very minor technical modifications. So just cleanup, I think is smart anytime administrative regulation is open and we're doing some cleanup work. We want to take some modifications for technical changes. So an example of this is Section 10, which is an existing component. We just pulled it out to make it its own section, to make it clear, which again is in response to some questions that we had. This is a better fit. This is the section that emphasizes the point that this specific administrative regulation is only for students who are enrolled in an attendance model. And so this is the point when I wanted to make, and Jenny referenced this, but there are two ways to enroll students in an online virtual remote learning program. One is through this specific administrative regulation, and that's the attendance model. If you think traditional kind of seat time attendance approach. And then the other way is through performance-based enrollment. Generally speaking, we have programs who focus on performance-based enrollment structures. And then we have programs who primarily focus on an attendance model. So this administrative regulation is only kind of overseeing the high quality measures of the attendance model, and that's a funding mechanism question. And so that's the extent of the amendments. Again, it's very, I think, very brief. One new thing, one clarification, and one emphasis. And so I would like to ask for any questions. Again, if not today, please reach out to myself and or Ben Maynard. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Marty. Any questions for Marty? If not, I would entertain a motion in a second to approve the proposed amendments to 704 KAR 3535 full-time enrollment online virtual and remote learning programs.
Chuck Fletcher makes the amendment motion.
Thank you.
Debbie Atherton, I will second.
Thank you, Debbie. Melissa, we're ready for the vote.
Okay, thank you. Artavia Acklin.
Aye.
Heather Aldridge.
Aye.
Deborah Atherton.
Aye.
Houston Barber.
Aye.
Martha Emmons.
Aye.
Chuck Fletcher.
Aye.
Janabeth Francis.
Aye.
Leslie Jeffries.
Aye.
Brenda McGowan.
Aye.
And Jason Reeves.
Aye.
Okay, unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're going to move right on into another proposed amendments to 704 KAR 3305. This is the minimum requirements for high school, and I believe Sarah Peace is the one who's going to be presenting for us this morning. Sarah, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, good morning, Chair Francis. I'm actually here today as well. My name is Mickey Ray, and I serve as the Chief Academic Officer in the Office of Teaching and Learning. And I am joined by Sarah Peace, who is the Policy Advisor for the OTL as well. And I want to preface this today by just quickly acknowledging Mr. Fletcher. So I think that that Mr. Fletcher will appreciate the amendments to this regulation. He was actually my civics teacher in Anderson County High School. And so the amendment that we're bringing forward today is in response to a piece of legislation that focused on the significance of civics education. And so if we can look at the next slide, our guiding question today is how can we as educators come together to equip Kentucky students to become engaged citizens? And the purpose of this amendment is to address at least a component of that. So the passage of House Bill 535 in the most recent session added a civic literacy graduation requirement. So you can see there it says that beginning with students entering grade 9 in 2025-2026, that academic year, districts now have a choice of two options. And in talking with our legislative partners on this particular bill, they were wanting to allow for more flexibility at the local level to determine how a student will demonstrate capacity for civic education. You know, currently we do have the civics test in place, but this amendment or this House bill allowed us to now have two different options. So a half credit course to include at minimum instruction in the specific areas of the bill, and our existing Kentucky Academic Standards for Social Studies civics strand also covers those components. And or the civics test, which will be composed of 100 questions from the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services test. But I did want to bring out there are some changes to the current policy, even if districts stick with the civics test, that would need to be in place for 25-26. You can see there at least 70% of the questions must be answered correctly. They're no longer able to use open notes or have any sort of instructional aids. And then there is a reporting requirement if districts elect to stick with the test itself. But I'm going to turn it over to Sarah P. So Sarah's going to talk about the amendments that the Office of Teaching and Learning will be bringing to the Kentucky Board of Education in response to that specific bill. So Sarah, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. It is wonderful to see you again. The proposed amendments are actually very simple to the regulation. First, the regulation previously stated that to earn a high school diploma, you have your requirements, and when it was specific to civics, it stated pass the civics test as required by KRS 158141. Now it just simply says successfully meet the civics requirement pursuant to the same law, KRS 158141. So regardless of what the school district chooses for their students, the regulation is written in such a way that it would allow that flexibility. I also wanted to share with you a couple of technical amendments that we have. The first is just the addition of a material incorporated by reference. The early graduation program has always required a letter of intent form, and the form hasn't changed, but drafting requirements under KRS Chapter 13A requires it to be material incorporated by reference, so we have conformed to that. Also, we just, anytime we can clean up language, remove outdated language, improve readability, we do those things as well. But that is really the summary of the changes.
So Chair Francis, we're happy to entertain any questions at this time.
And she may have had to step away for just a moment, or she may be having some technical difficulties.
There she is.
I had technical difficulties, and they were completely the user. I got all excited about going to a civics course, and I clicked the wrong button.
No worries.
So, I will at this time see if anybody has questions. Okay, if not, I would look for a motion and a second to approve the proposed amendments to Section 4 KAR 305 minimum requirements for high school graduation.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Heather. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, former civics teacher. I'm glad you got in there as the on the record. Okay, Melissa, for the roll call vote.
All righty. Artavia Acklin.
Aye.
Heather Aldridge.
Aye.
Deborah Atherton.
Aye.
Houston Barber.
Aye.
Martha Emmons.
Aye.
Chuck Fletcher.
Aye.
Chair Francis.
Aye.
Leslie Jeffries.
Aye.
Brenda McGowan.
Aye.
Jason Reeves.
Aye.
All right. Unanimous. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you, Mickey and Sarah. I'm excited for this one. We're going to now talk about the Kentucky Academic Standards Review and Revision Update. Crystal Rowland is here along with Jennifer Green, and they're both in the Office of Teaching and Learning.
Good morning. My name is Crystal Rowland, and I serve as the Director of Program Standards in the Office of Teaching and Learning. And today we're going to share just some updates around our Kentucky Academic Standards and where we are with the revision process. As we're sharing this morning, we invite you to consider what are additional resources or supports that could be used to support your educators in implementing the Kentucky Academic Standards for Visual and Performing Arts, and what resources and supports might be helpful for school level leaders in supporting the implementation of the standards as well. So KRS 158.6453 calls for the KDE to implement a process for the review of all academic standards. And this began in the 2017-2018 school year. The schedule calls for 1 to 2 content areas to be reviewed each year and every 6 years thereafter on a rotating basis. And that rotating basis will be important as we move forward in sharing this morning. We're excited to share that the Kentucky Academic Standards for Visual and Performing Arts has finished out the review process. It was heard by the Kentucky Board of Education on June 6th and approved. At that time, it began the regulatory process, which will take approximately 6 to 9 months. And we'll send out a press release and communication through our regular communication channels at that time to make sure everyone knows. I've invited Jessica Green, our Visual and Performing Arts consultant, to join us this morning to share some of the highlights from this revision.
Good morning. Thank you, Crystal, and thank you all for having me. I'm very excited about the revisions to these standards that the committee did, and also excited in hearing all the talk today about vibrant student experiences, and just the committee was well grounded in the work of United We Learn and the focus on vibrant student learning experiences, especially through the connecting standards. And so you can see on the screen those 4 columns, they are now color coded. That is one of the big changes in the document. Color coding also kind of gives a nod to the National Core Arts Standards, so there's some alignment there. And there's an addition of front matter that is cohesive with the other CAS documents for other content areas now. The addition of key vocabulary and clarification statements in order to provide clarity for teachers that are at different levels of understanding of the arts in the 5 disciplines. And those 5 disciplines are dance, media arts, music, theater, and visual arts. There is also an addition, development of discipline introductions that give very clear understandings of how those 5 disciplines are unique, but also work together in a unified manner through the anchor standards. And then also the addition of a discipline-specific glossary for those key vocabulary terms that are identified at the beginning of each of the standards layouts. The next slide just shows a larger version of that anchor standards overview, which also reflects some of the embedded resources we've provided for teachers as like a one-page printout that they can access on a regular basis and share with their administrators as they are in their classroom. And then the next slide I want to talk about is the actual architecture of the document. This was by far the largest change to the document. You're seeing just one of the 4 colors that is throughout the document for all 5 disciplines.
but you have your identification now at the top left to really ground the teachers in what their area is: creating, performing, responding, or connecting. Then you have your foundational information with the anchor standard, the enduring understanding, essential question, and the key vocabulary all in one spot before it goes into the actual standards layout of the information with underlined key vocabulary that hyperlinks to those glossaries as well. And then clarification statements, anything that was discipline specific or standard specific language that could benefit from additional clarification was provided by the committee as well. This is by far, Crystal likes to say, one of the more aesthetically pleasing standards documents in terms of the color coding that we used as an organizational tool, and just really pleased with the work of the committee, those teachers and community leaders and university professors who put their expertise into refining this document. That is all I have. I can give it back to Crystal or answer any questions.
Thank you, Jessica, so much. I do want to point out, just as Jessica said, it's very visually pleasing the way that the standards are organized, but also the creative processes that you see across the top of the anchor standards really lend themselves well to local portraits of a learner and support really those vibrant learning experiences we want to see for students. And so we're very excited, very proud to present this document for teachers across the Commonwealth. And we, as Jessica said, truly appreciate the time and effort from those teacher leaders who came together to review and revise the standards, and appreciate leadership in releasing those teachers in order to be a part of that work. With our other standards documents, we currently have our Kentucky Academic Standards for Health Education and Physical Education open for review. So we have our standards writers who are working on that first draft of that document. So this document should be released for a 30-day public comment period, most likely in the fall of this year. A press release will be issued and it will be publicized via our regular communication channels. We welcome teachers, leaders, students, families, and members of the general public to participate in that survey. We talked about previously that every 6 years on a rotating basis that our standards would be reviewed. And so we have coming up in 2025 the CAS for reading and writing, social studies, and mathematics, which will all be due for review in 2025. These areas require the review of the standards and the assessment blueprints, and the process is a bit more comprehensive for these areas. So you'll notice that this graphic includes a few more steps. It'll begin with an application for teachers to apply to be on the advisory panels and/or review committee. And it's a lot of work to serve on these committees, but it is a process that many of our teachers take pride in participating in. There will also be a 30-day public comment survey for each of the current standards documents. We are attempting to stagger the start of each of the content area review process, and this really will allow us to adjust our staffing as well as attempt to stagger the effective dates for each of these areas. You can anticipate the application for the advisory panels and review committee members for reading and writing, as well as the public comment survey for reading and writing to be released in the fall of this year. And we've also heard that computer science standards will also be reviewed in 2025 as well. So I'd like to revisit our question around additional resources or supports that you envision would be helpful in supporting our educators and implementing the Kentucky Academic Standards for Visual and Performing Arts, and also those resources that might be helpful for school level leaders and building principals.
Thank you, Crystal and Jessica. And I will start by saying, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said you've taken the beautiful graphic in the Fine and Performing Arts Standards and made it into a one-page document. So I think that resource is great for administrators being able to walk in and say, what should I see in this class? And so I would love to see a resource that takes that as a starting point and actually sets up a protocol for school leaders when they're walking in classrooms to be able to practice and do that. And I love that resource. I do think you all do a great job of informing teachers, and I know my teachers in my district have already thought a lot about how to start implementing these. And so I think that's great. I'm going to open the floor for people who might also have other comments. Martha, did you want to say something? Okay. I would also want to end by saying, please, anyone who talks to teachers, get them to fill out the application to participate. If you have a teacher leader, this is an incredible opportunity. It is a ton of work, but your teachers leave with such a great understanding of the standards, and they're able to talk about their incredible opportunity of working close with KDE. And I think that creates a lot of positive momentum in your district. Thank you, Crystal and Jessica.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
Clarification. Do you need teachers to serve on the visual and performing arts as well as health education and physical education? Is that right?
And actually, the new ones are going to be the reading and writing, and the ones at the very end, social studies and mathematics.
Right,
the teachers have already been selected for those others.
Okay.
But that was a great question. It comes out so early, you kind of have to know that there's every 6 years, there's going to be a new standard work. And this is a big year with reading and math being in the same year, not to mention social studies that lots of people feel like are new still. So we're revising them quickly.
Absolutely.
Okay, I appreciate you all having time to come today. And if there are no more questions, we are going to move on. And we do not have proposed amendment concerning the Common Kindergarten Entry Screener. We're going to jump into the last proposed amendment and hear back from Rhonda and Jennifer. They bookend the presentation, and this is on 703 KAR 5080 Administrative Code for Kentucky's Educational Assessment System.
This is the code that is used annually for training to remind people what they sort of rules around the administration of the assessment. This applies to all assessments that are used in accountability reporting. And so because of that, there's a federal expectation that states ensure consistent administration for any assessment that leads eventually to federal designations. And obviously, it's a fairly broad document. The actual regulation is quite small, but this incorporates a document by reference. And that document by reference contains sort of the heart of correct behavior during the administration of assessment or behavior that would not be appropriate. And like much of the work we talked about earlier, we do need to sort of put some updates in place. This regulation was before we were online testing, and pretty much most of the testing currently is in an online platform. And we need to make sure there's a reflection there. Also, we work closely with our Office of Legal Services and our allegations coordinator. So we've added some clarifications to this regulation to sort of make it clearer to folks where the appropriate direction is as you're administering the assessment, and just to kind of things that have come up as questions to make sure that it's clear as people are assessing within that online environment. And there is still occasionally some paper assessment, but making sure that everyone has the information they need to be successful. The guiding question, we want you to think with us about the impact of these administration regulation changes, these proposed amendments might have on school and district staff or on the administration of the state required assessments. So if you can kind of put that on your sort of thinking cap as we go through these changes and highlight what is a clarification, what is different, and Jenny will walk us through that portion of the presentation today. But be thinking about, could this be something that has an impact on school district staff or on just the administration of the state required assessments. Hopefully it will be areas where the impact clarifies where there has been confusion. Jenny, I'll turn to you to talk a little bit about the changes.
Thank you, Rhonda. So there are a substantial number of changes that we're recommending in this material incorporated by reference. Most of them are not going to impact the way things are done currently, but just make something clearer or address something where we've received a lot of questions. So rather than go through this material incorporated by reference line by line, we thought it would be better just to summarize the general changes that would be made and then a little bit more specific. So in this slide general, the first bullet says where it's applicable, we would like to add examples of items that are considered to be secure test materials, such as testing tickets and seal codes. So typically throughout the document, we're saying that paper test booklets or student answer documents are secure, but online testing requires materials beyond that. So these test tickets and seal codes. So throughout, there'll be changes that we're recommending to update that. Then on the next bullet, we're just wanting to update throughout the document just language that accounts for the differences between administering a paper-based test and administering an online test. So one example of this that we're proposing is we currently have a sentence that says a student shall not be allowed to take a test booklet or answer booklet out of the testing area without proper supervision. So we would want to revise that to say something such as a student shall not be allowed to take secure test materials such as test tickets or paper test booklets without proper supervision. So as Rhonda pointed out, we're not removing the language about paper testing, so because some students will still test that way, but just adding the language that is specific to online that's not currently in there. Excuse me. There, let's see. Then go to the next slide here. So occasionally, schools might be asked to administer a field test. It doesn't happen often where we're asking a school to do like a standalone field test, but if the state were to transition to a different kind of structure of tests, such as through-year testing or something like that, then most likely field testing would have to be part of that. So we propose that making it clear that if a field test is administered, that it should also follow the administration code procedures. We have had questions about that where people will say, well, should I cover my classroom walls and that kind of thing? But a field test should be administered as closely as possible to the way the operational test would be administered. We're also recommending to delete the sentence, if the student refuses to sign the honor code, testing should move forward. So with the paper booklets, there's an honor code at the beginning of the test, online and paper, but in the paper booklets, a student didn't have to sign that. They could just move forward without testing. And there was no fuss about it from the teacher. So that the honor code basically just says the students agreeing pretty much that they're not going to cheat on the test. But in the online platform, there is no choice for that. The honor code appears as a pop-up when the student logs in. And so if they do not click that they agree to the honor code, the system itself won't allow them to advance to the next screen without doing that. So that's why we're recommending to do that. We want to clarify that the training required for people that might be involved in any component of the assessment should be done annually. Currently, it says dedicated time. Now, we say annually in our training, but we want it to be clear also in the document that we're talking about annual training. Test security, of course, is a big part of the administration code. We do have a few recommendations here. One, the first bullet, we want to clarify that all secure assessment materials should be stored in a secure double locked location. So that basically just means that you have to get through 2 locks to get to those materials. There were a few places in the administration code where it just says locked storage. So we want to make sure that we're clear on that. Next, we want to clarify that release test items can be used to help prepare students for testing. Currently, it says that test items that are posted to the KDE website, we do want it to be absolutely clear that we're referring to items that have officially been released and will not be used in an operational test again. And primarily that's due to, well, one, I guess the primary reason is that on our website, we do have our survey test items or survey items posted, but we should not be using those to prepare students for the test. So we just want to make it clear that that's not what we're talking about. The next bullet says add technical support staff to the persons who must annually sign a non-disclosure form. Sometimes the tech staff don't exactly view themselves as being involved in test administration, or maybe their administrators don't, but even though they're not administering a test, in their role, they could be exposed to secure test materials or items. So add that. And then we want to clarify that test materials should not be shared through saved or cloud-based or other drives or servers. So we've had instances where an administrator might have shared testing tickets or seal codes through email or put them on a Google Drive for others to link into. And we just want to note that that is not a secure way of handling those materials. Right. Then on electronic devices here, we just want to point out that those electronic devices should occur on a school managed, we're going to say a school managed device. We do encourage that devices are provided by the school and students use those school provided devices when they're testing. But if a student does need to use their own device for some reason, the school would need to ensure that the updates are current and things like that. So we say it should be at least a school managed device. And that was a recommendation from our technology department here. Then this section here, add detail about the test administrator's role to actively monitor students during testing. So we get quite a few reports of violations of the admin code, or what we call allegations, each year, and many of them occur because a test administrator wasn't engaged in monitoring the test. They weren't walking around the room making sure that students weren't using cell phones or that they weren't sharing answers with each other and things like that. So we've added some language just to really to emphasize how important it is to actively monitor the test, not using that time for, it's a quiet time, and teachers might think, well, this is a great time to get my lessons planned or grade some papers, but we're trying to just emphasize that that's not a good time to do those things. It's that active monitoring is very important. That's really a major cause of allegations, is because monitoring wasn't happening. And then this last bullet's just another example of updating language to address that we have online testing now. So we had language that says a teacher shouldn't leave the room with test booklets unattended, but we want to add also that they shouldn't leave students alone while they're in opened, or even if they're not in, but just with opened online test sessions. They shouldn't leave those unattended. This next section is test prep and student motivation rewards. And this category is more about, I guess, in the motivation category. I think that's why it's here. But we would like to eliminate the section that allows schools to instruct students to rewrite responses to questions for disciplinary purposes, and then send those written responses to KDE and submit the original for scoring. So there are cases sometimes where a student might write if in paper or draw in paper or write a response or type a response that is something inappropriate. Maybe it's something obscene or that they're making threats or something that they shouldn't do. Well, we had allowed for them to rewrite that response if the school wanted them to do that as a disciplinary tactic, and then just send the original for scoring. But with the online testing, it's not really a possibility. Once the student has submitted all of their responses for a test, there isn't a way to return back to that test and look at the question prompt again to do that. So we're recommending to delete that. The second bullet deals with good faith effort checklist, and some clarification of what can be used as rewards for students' good efforts and what maybe shouldn't be done if students aren't giving good efforts. So we want to clarify that staff shouldn't give students monetary rewards. That's something that we have seen on occasion, that we shouldn't, it's not a bribery thing. I guess we don't want to give students money for performing well on the test, but then also prohibit punishing students, because occasionally we've heard that a student may be excluded from fun activity if they didn't perform well on a test or something like that. So we want to prohibit that as a possibility. Next, the main focus on this section actually involves a change in the way that allegations are managed. And I believe we have our allegations coordinator online with us, if any, Beth Bales, if any questions come up. But I'll do my best to explain the process now. So currently in the document, there's a section that lists out a variety of incidents that can happen during testing that wouldn't necessarily have to be reported as an allegation, but just documented at the district level. But what we see is that DACs either tend to report everything anyway, or they don't report incidents that really should be reported. So just to kind of keep consistency and avoid any confusion with that, we are recommending that all potential allegations or violations be reported as allegations to KDE to investigate. Now, if there isn't enough evidence to support an allegation, or if the incident doesn't warrant an allegation, then the coordinator will respond accordingly and the case will be closed. It would just be the end of it. But basically, reporting all of those just makes the response to all of those scenarios more consistent, because the evaluation of whether it's an allegation or not comes from just that one office instead of hundreds of different administrators trying to make those judgment decisions. Now, currently, if one of those incidents is determined to be an allegation, then the KDE allegations coordinator will report the findings to a testing board of review. That board makes recommendations then to the commissioner of education about the outcome. If it's an allegation, perhaps they recommend that the person receive additional training or something like that. But those recommendations have been approved by the board up to this point. Well, that testing board of review meets average monthly, but sometimes less frequently than that. So we're actually recommending that testing board of review be eliminated from the allegation process. And the main reason for that is that the need to wait for that board to meet can slow that process down and create a type of backlog, I guess, of unresolved cases. And it causes the office to get behind, and people are waiting on their decisions and what the outcome is going to be. Just allows things to pile up. So we're recommending eliminating that, because, not only does it slow down the process, it doesn't really change the outcome. What we've heard from the legal office is that in most cases, I think the data we were given, there were about 1,000 allegations of those, and out of those allegations, there were only a couple that where the testing board of review differed in what they recommended from what the allegations coordinator coordinator recommended, and it wasn't even in a significant way. So we'd like to do that, recommend that. And then finally, getting to the end here, this last section, on the first bullet, there's a section that says that states, that districts shall not be required to allow reviews of secure materials. And this is referring to those kinds of situations where maybe a parent or a community member might ask to see a question on a test for some reason. Maybe the student went home and talked about a test question, and the parent thought, well, I need to know more about that because something didn't sound right to them or something. And so we have allowed reviews of those secure test items. But what we're saying here, and we still will allow that, but what we would like to say is, instead of will not be required to allow, we would like to just go ahead and say that the districts themselves shouldn't allow reviews of secure materials. It just isn't feasible to bring someone to review a test question into an online exam that has already been submitted. We can't get back into there, and we especially wouldn't want them to come in to review a session that a student's working in. So we just don't think it would be appropriate at the district level. We would still allow it. They would just need to set that up with KDE where we could have a way of doing that. And then the last recommendation here is this was actually made by one of our district coordinators. We thought it was a good suggestion that instead of just saying on a signature page, I should say that there's a signature page at the end of this document that everyone who's involved in test administration is supposed to sign. Currently, it just says that they acknowledge they've received a copy of it, but we would like to add have received and read a copy of the administration code. So they didn't just actually get it, put it in the cabinet, but they actually have read it. So those are overall the changes that we're recommending. Again, a lot of little edits that go in line with these, but I'll stop now and see if anybody has any questions about any of those.
Okay, I'll jump in with a question on the last thing, the signature page, or actually it's just a suggestion. You've been talking about annual training, and this just says I received and read it. It doesn't say anything about having been trained. And so I think it's a good place to catch that. It does make people pause for that. And then my question, of course, you're not going to be surprised, is going back to DACs and other people submitting all concerns. I guess I don't know if you've all probably worked the logistics of it, but will it be turning in all the documentation you normally would collect, or are you turning in a summary page of what went on? Because if I'm collecting a lot of documentation, this could potentially be a lot of extra work for people in the district.
That's a great question. I'm not sure if Beth Bales is on and can assist with that question. Melissa, can you tell if she's online?
Online. She is. Yeah, she's here.
Oh, awesome. Beth, are you able to address that?
Yes, I believe I can. I think that the items that we're recommending be eliminated from the document incorporated by reference in the administration code.
Hey, Beth, I am so sorry to bother you. I think your mic might be turned up. I see your headset, but we can't. There you go. Thank you.
Anyway, the items that we're recommending be reported that currently state in the admin code need not to be reported. I think these are the types of allegations that are listed there are items that are normally reported by all districts. At least it's my understanding. If you look at the current version of the administration code, it says, I'll have to look, it gives like 4 different examples of things that it says don't need to be reported. However, historically, people have always reported those types of allegations. And so basically, we were just trying to make the language meet what people actually do. So I don't think that it's going to be reporting things that you wouldn't normally report. At least that's my understanding. Give me just a second to pull up the document here. I apologize for not having that up.
I think that's enough clarification just to understand that we're just reporting what we normally would report instead of trying to make the decision on our own. So that clarifies that for me. Thank you, Beth.
One of the things that was listed specifically was like if a student doesn't receive accommodations, like this doesn't need to be reported. And I mean, we receive countless numbers of allegations where students don't receive allegations. And I mean, it is a violation, and I'm not sure why it was in there that it didn't need to be reported. So I think it's kind of bringing everybody into line with what they already do to make it less confusing, if that makes sense.
That does. Thank you, Beth.
You're welcome.
Other questions? I know from the DAC community, we are excited to have some revisions to this document. So I appreciate everything Jennifer, you, and Rhonda and the rest of OAA has done. This is a tricky document to get the wording just right on.
Yeah, it is.
So
I have a question.
Okay.
I have a quick question. Jennifer, back to the slide about the good faith effort. I'm just wondering, is that a change? Is there any change there? You said that a student could not be kept from participating in something. So I'm just would you go over that? What actually is a good faith effort then, and what could a district do?
So we allow the teachers to use, this is really a district assessment coordinator decision, but we allow the use of good faith effort checklist. We don't develop them. The schools will develop them themselves. And it may say something like came to school prepared with a pencil. Then I'm using some older terminology, I guess, but those kinds of things. Stayed focused on testing or something. So we're not eliminating the possibility of that, but just making clear a little bit more about, we didn't specifically say that students cannot be have negative consequences if they don't meet the efforts on the checklist. So again, I think the example I used was about missing recess or something. We've heard of cases like that where students would have to miss recess, or they wouldn't get a popsicle with everyone else, or different things that, depending on what the school decided to give as a reward, that in a daily kind of way. So Beth may want to speak more on this. She hears the allegations. Our office may occasionally hear about one, but they all go through her, and we don't know a lot of them until she gives us that information. But do you have any more justification about why we added that?
There was a specific allegation that was filed, and I can't remember if it was this year or last year. I think it was this year, where a student was held in from recess based on a perceived lack of good faith effort type thing. And that was in the previous version of the admin code. It really hadn't been addressed that you couldn't impose negative consequences. I think that was kind of always a implicit expectation, but based on that allegation, I guess we felt that it would be a good thing to revise that to explicitly say, don't impose negative consequences.
So
I think this will, go ahead, Debbie.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the way this is worded, it's very confusing. So we might have a good faith celebration at the end of testing that includes going outside and getting a popsicle and running. And if at the end of testing you did not meet the criteria, you're not going outside and running. We haven't, during testing, not allowed you to go outside for recess, but our incentive is an extra hour block with a popsicle. And so it's very confusing how you've said this, because the kid is going to see it as a punishment, but they didn't earn it. And so this is going to be you're going to have millions of questions about this.
That's my question.
I understand the intent is to say, if I started the test on Monday and Monday afternoon, you're not supposed to evaluate good faith until the end of testing anyway.
Right.
But prohibits punishment for lack of good faith, I understand, but I don't see not earning my reward as punishment. So how is that going to be written? If not, you're never going to get the support of the DACs or the principals.
Because that's a very good point.
Non-factor.
And I think, I probably added to the confusion of it because I think I used that not getting a popsicle as a punishment example, and that was probably a mistake on my end. But I do see what you're saying and how important it will be to be clear on that. Janet Beth, you may remember bringing up one time something about this, because we had at one time thought it would really kind of be nice to just eliminate those from the code, because people handle them in so many different ways. But you had made a comment, well, we also don't want a situation where people can do anything because nothing is said about it. So we do feel like we should say something. So we appreciate that feedback to help us maybe get it a little clearer.
And maybe the word is, an incentive may be withheld at the end, but there shouldn't be an additional punishment. It's, you may not get to go outside and get your popsicle, right, but I'm not going to make you sit inside and write, I will do better on the test 100 times.
Right. That's a great suggestion.
Yeah, great suggestion. We'll go back and look at it in the document incorporated by reference, and then also how it's summarized here. So it could be that we can clean up clarification in both places. It could be it's clear in the document and less clear in the summary. So we'll take a look at that. So those are excellent points. And I like your notion of separating out sort of the incentive from the concept of the punishment.
Right. Great question,
Debbie. Very good question. I will add too, I should have probably mentioned it at the beginning, regulations do take quite a long process, as you've heard today, to start and finish. And so this would not impact, obviously, this current school year that we are in. This would be something that would be wrapped up and training would be developed. So if it stays on schedule, around this time of year, we would be offering training, or maybe just a little earlier, on what the changes are to the regulation and the new one. So this would not impact until the 25-26 school year.
And we DACs appreciate that from you all.
Absolutely, we all do.
We don't want this brag changing midstream.
No, not mid-year. Not mid-year. It'll start just with the beginning of the fall.
Okay.
Jennifer, just as I was looking at the document that's on the screen now, just that part that says prohibits punishments for lack of good faith effort, maybe go to the positive, allows rewards for good faith effort, and just that might take care of it.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, at this point, I would like to see if we have anyone who would like to make a motion to approve the proposed amendments to 703 KAR 5080 Administration Code for Kentucky's Educational Assessment Program.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Heather. And a second?
I second the motion.
Thank you. And that was Mr. Fletcher, I believe.
Yes.
So thank you. Melissa, I hope we still have quorum and you can do the roll call.
I've been watching. I think we're still good. Artavia Ackland.
Aye.
Okay. Heather Aldridge.
Aye.
Deborah Atherton.
Aye.
Houston Barber.
Aye.
Martha Emmons.
Aye.
Chuck Fletcher.
Aye.
Chair Francis.
Aye.
Leslie Jeffries.
Aye.
Brenda McGowan.
Aye.
And Jason Reeds. And he may have hopped off, but that's okay. We had 10, so we still have quorum for that vote. So,
well, excellent. Thank you. And that leads us to our very last item, and that is new SCAAC member updates. And the update is you all are still on. Yay! Hang in there. We are hoping to get the new appointments. Many of you are actually officially still rolling because of the way your appointment was. But we hope you will block off September 17th. Either way, if we don't have new appointments, we will keep rolling with the existing council. But our next two meetings are September 17th and November 19th. You can see that there's a lot of things going on at KDE, and we really should be able to see. Hopefully we can get Jennifer back and hear about Prototype 3. There's going to be a lot to talk about. Probably have some more amendments to look at, but we so appreciate you all coming today and listening. This was a great meeting. I appreciate everyone joining in on the discussion. As always, we couldn't do this meeting without the support of Melissa and Ben in the background. Melissa for keeping us all on track and being organized, and Ben for making sure when we accidentally get ourselves out of the system, you can help us get back in. We appreciate your time to the SCAAC members. I know today was a longer meeting, but I really appreciate the attentiveness and the focus, and all of this is for the good of the Commonwealth students, and we really love that we can come together and think about assessment, accountability, and curriculum, and how those three items can propel learning forward in Kentucky. So at this time, I would take a motion to adjourn.
I'll motion.
Thank you, and it looked like Martha gave me a second. So thank you to everyone. Have a great rest of July and get your backpack ready for school starting here pretty soon.